anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. And anti-Semitism, if you think about it, doesn't make sense in any normal sense. Because normally, hatred is for a reason. But anti-Semitism is completely irrational. So in the 19th century, Jews were hated because they were communist and because they were capitalist. They were hated because they were rich and because they were poor. They were hated because they kept to themselves, and they were hated because they infiltrated everything and got everywhere. They were hated because, on the one hand, Voltaire saw them as a people rooted in a superstitious ancient faith. They were hated because the communists thought they were rootless cosmopolitans who believed nothing. So anti-Semitism at every level is a contradiction in terms. How then do we understand it? Anti-Semitism is a virus. Now, the body has this extraordinarily sophisticated thing called the immune system, which protects it against viruses. So how do viruses infiltrate the body's immune system? The answer is that viruses mutate. And that's what anti-Semitism has done over time. It mutates. So here is a brief history of anti-Semitism. In the ancient world, the Greeks and some of the Roman writers were critical of Jews. And often people see that as anti-Semitism. Actually, it wasn't, because the Greeks thought that everyone who wasn't a Greek was a barbarian. So, as they say in the mafia, just before they shoot you, nothing personal, strictly business. So Greek and Hellenistic anti-Jewish writings are not really anti-Semitic. They're just anti-foreigner. They are xenophobia. They're not Judeophobia, hatred of the people not like us. So when does anti-Semitism really begin? The short answer is, sadly, it begins with Christianity. For the first time, Christians hated Jews specifically, not just in general. Why? Because they, in so many words, rejected their own Messiah. From that moment, it became personal, focused, targeted. And that was the birth, if you like, of what I would call religious anti-Judaism. That is Mark 1. The next mutation occurs somewhere around 1096, the First Crusade, when Jews were massacred across Europe by the Crusaders on the way to liberate the Holy Land. That was not just hatred of Jews because they weren't Christians. That was what I call demonic anti-Semitism. All of a sudden, Jews were not just the people who rejected Christianity, but they were guilty of desecrating the host, poisoning the wells, spreading the plague, the blood libel. All of a sudden, Christianity began to see Jews as a malevolent force of evil in the world. Satan, the infidel, the Antichrist. That was anti-Semitism Mark II. Anti-Semitism Mark III, we can date precisely 1879. The word anti-Semitism was coined in that year by a German journalist called Wilhelm Marr. And of course, that was different from the anti-Semitism of the past, because this was not religious, it was racial. And the second racial anti-Semitism was born. The whole history became much more tragic, because you can change your religion, but you can't change your race. Christians might work for the conversion of Jews, but racial anti-Semites could only work for the, God forbid, extermination of Jews. And we are living through the fourth mutation. The fourth mutation is what I would call religious anti-Zionism. All of a sudden, Jews are attacked not as individuals, but as a nation in its own land. And we suddenly become the one people on earth who are not entitled to have a land, a country, a society of their own. And that, of course, becomes anti-Semitism when all Jews are presumed to be Zionists and therefore guilty of the primal sin of wanting a country of their own. So that is anti-Semitism Mark IV, and that is where we're at the moment.